Hello and Happy New Year! My name is Mike Liorti. Thank you so much for checking out my podcast, State of My Art Podcast, where I chat with fellow creatives about their projects, message, and journey to give you some inspiration and ideas. On today's episode, I chat with Brian and Christian Zawacki. They're brothers from Virginia Beach. Brian plays bass, Christian plays drums. They played as my rhythm section in Rosedale for pretty much all of 2013, which was one crazy year. So we get into some of that. They're now playing in a band called Dead Friends. So check them out. We Are Dead Friends on Instagram. They're like an experimental indie hardcore-ish band. Have an eye for their new album, which is going to be trickling out starting in February. So let's get to it. My conversation with Brian and Christian Zawacki happened on New Year's Eve, January 31st, 2020. We're really doing it. Welcome to the show, boys. Thank you for being on and taking the time. It's been a minute. For those of you who don't know, this is Brian and Christian Zawacki, two amazingly talented musicians, brothers from Virginia Beach, and they've played as my rhythm section for Rosedale for several tours between like 2012, 2014, and they've let me crash at their place for several months. Of me,
you lived with us. Yeah, you moved in.
Pretty much moved in for a while there in Virginia Beach.
Yeah,
and we had some good hangs, some great shows, some long drives, and some very interesting nights staying in other people's living rooms.
Yeah, I went to college for a semester like a few years ago, and I wrote a paper about that house we stayed in West Virginia, where we woke up and there were ferrets. There was ferret shit on the floor, and the ferrets were like in my sleeping bag, and they like got my toothpaste out of my backpack.
Yeah, they took Nick's toothbrush.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I can't remember that stay and that house, but I know that stuff happened because I've had many interesting stays in West Virginia. The first time I had this drum sitting beside my head that I woke up to this crazy girl smashing this drum in my ear at like 4 a.m. And the rest of my band at the time was just like staying up, hanging out. Like, I don't know how you're sleeping through this, but I was just so exhausted. I think I told the story on this podcast already, but I don't remember like the house that we stayed at where, they took Nick's toothbrush and all that.
Dude,
that was the show that it was outdoors on some back big patio. And what was that band that like everything they did was like a werewolf pun?
I don't even know. I don't know who that is.
It was some... And it was the same show with the band that was doing the song that was like, "Keep away from me, you look like murder in the first degree."
Man, it's all so much of that is a blur to me now. It's a shame. I've just played so many shows, I forget a lot of them.
We always remember different things. He will say like bring up some stuff he remembers, and I'm just like, what the fuck, and vice versa.
Do we all remember Nick's phone getting stolen in Oklahoma?
Oh my god, yes.
Yeah,
that's like a
ridiculous.
Yeah, the detective quest line of the day.
Goddamn. That was so funny.
That was awesome.
That's true. That like everyone I've toured with remembers different shows, different events from shows, and like other nights are more significant than others, for better or for worse. But that's stuff like that everybody remembers. Nick's phone getting stolen from Matt Hoffman's skate park
in Oklahoma City.
Yeah. And then we like drove around in the van and trailer tracking it. We end up at the front of on the street in front of the kid's house who stole it, and like
because the kid who stole it immediately sold it off to get rid of it. It was such an endeavor.
Jesus.
But we got it, and when we got it back, we were like, "Holy shit, we did it!"
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. That was like, I think I was more stoked in that moment that we got his phone back than like, I don't know, the success of playing a good show. Like, it was like,
Yeah, totally.
it was such a high, such a hit of dopamine. Like, yes, we solved this crime on our own.
we were getting fucked over like left and right, and so like to win one was like bliss.
Exactly.
And I'm like, am I romanticizing this or like combining it with maybe some TV show I saw? But I remember rolling up on that street where it said the phone was, and there's like
Some tough dudes.
there's some tough motherfuckers, like Hispanic dudes with their shirts off, covered in tattoos, and we're like, fuck, it's in there. Of course.
And then it was like this little kid who, like, the only reason we got it back was like his stepdad was like, no, you're giving that phone back. Like, that's enough.
Yeah. Because he sold it, he like traded it or sold it for like an iPod or something.
Oh, yeah. And then, like, we had to
Smart
follow.
kid.
His stepdad was like, follow us. We know where he sold it. Oh,
great.
man.
God.
That makes me, this is a good time to segue to my crazy idea that will probably never happen, in which it's a video game based on the life of touring, and it's kind of Grand Theft Auto-esque meets Tony Hawk Pro Skater, where you got to like build your way up the ladder to success through music. And we have so many stories that could be the plots, including that one. The last episode I released of the podcast was with my friend David Hagler. I don't know if you guys remember him, but he was the owner of the house in St. Louis where we played that house show. We set up outside. Everything was good to go.
Yeah. Yes.
We were with Follow Me Forward, and they played, and then we were about to play, and the cops show up, and they're like, you got to move everything inside. So I kept in contact with him, and he's been like my good computer buddy. He's always like, hey, if I have a computer problem, I hit him up, and he's always helping me out, and I stay at his place every time I drive through St. Louis. And he's a software developer, so he develops programs for companies and dabbles in video games, and he's creating this like virtual world.
And nunchucks.
And nunchucks, that's right. Okay, you remember that. I forgot that.
I remember that show so well because
Shame. Pure shame.
I still have like little tiny spouts of like anxiety. Like, I can put myself there because I remember the kids who were at the show, or they were probably the other bands or something. They didn't understand they didn't understand our set and everything that was involved. And so the fact that we now tacked on like an hour to relocate, they didn't get that it wasn't as simple as moving drums and amps inside. And I just remember like they just said, that one kid said over and over again, he's like, you don't need all this crap. You're not dubstep artists. You're not dubstep artists.
Right.
And like, I think to protect myself, I kind of just like I never do stuff like this because I don't like to make waves. But I think just to make myself feel better about like these people being mad at me, I was just like, you know what, man, it makes like, you don't understand, and it makes no difference to me because after today, like, I'm never gonna see you again, so I don't care if you hate me, it's fine. And that totally like pissed them off to like the 10th power. Like,
they all left.
Yeah, he was like, they were furious.
We're
after
the instant
that.
enemy.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said that, but that was like, yeah. And then I just remember homeboy walking around with his like nunchucks.
They all they had the show at another house and we weren't invited.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
They all relocated and we were not invited.
Yeah, that came up with David Hagler. Is like, okay, and then in the video game we have this house show, but with the cops show up, and then we have to figure out how we're gonna make the kids stay because they're gonna go to another house and have the house show over there, and you're not
You're
invited.
losing them. Oh my god. That's great.
Yeah, we didn't get invited a lot of places after playing shows with you.
Yeah, and that was like the early days of like, all right, let's set up our own light show and see how that goes. And a lot of people kind of hated us for that. And I had similar struggles with like my first tour overseas in Europe, because it was like I ordered a bunch of lights from Amazon and returned them at the end of the tour, but it was like I was packing them into their boxes at the end of each night because I didn't have cases or anything. So because of me, we were leaving an hour later for every show, and like I felt bad, but it's like you figure it out as you go. Now I have like a stage plot where it's like I hand it to the sound guy at the beginning of the night, and he's like, this is awesome, actually. Like, you do you. Because it's like, it clearly shows that I'm not an idiot. I know what I'm doing with this stuff. And I'll be out of everybody's way. Like, so you learn that stuff as you go. And that could all be integrated into the video game, because like anything, you know, you get your tour etiquette, your stage etiquette, your personalities within the band etiquette. Like, you kind of figure all that out as you go. And over the last 6 years, you guys have been a part of many other projects. And Brian, you've been on Warped Tour until its dying day. And that could, you know, I want that to be like one of the seasons of this video game of like get through Warped Tour and like get your way to the main stage of Warped Tour, starting from the parking lot.
I still tell people that's still the best summer like of my life.
It was. I always say, I am so glad I did it. I would never do it again. Yeah. It was the hardest thing on the body, like, ever.
I don't think I could do it again now. I turned 21 on that tour, and I'm 28 now. And I don't know if I could do it again.
Yeah, it's a grind.
It was
but like
so brutal.
It's like, it's one of those things where 2 weeks into it, you're just like, your body adapts and you're able to sleep 2 hours a night and eat very little food. And you end up like just becoming this beast of a touring artist. And we had that, especially with all the shit that we were setting up that summer. It was like, we were like,
dude,
beast roadies, beast musicians. Like, that was, we were playing like Beatles sets. We were playing sometimes 4 hours, because we'd play an hour straight in the morning, 2 hours as people were leaving sometimes, if we were lucky, like we wanted to. But like
multiple sets, like in the morning and at night sometimes, even like, especially on the West Coast where people liked us.
Yeah, that's just what I was about to say, is like totally just, you know, we finished a set, my hands are bleeding, it hurts to hold anything in my hands, and we're just like, oh, we're about to go again, and it's just like, okay. It was the ultimate test in the heat, you know, no tent over us. So all I could think, because, you know, people don't really have the patience to watch a 2-hour documentary these days, is like making a video game where people would be like, wow, this is telling an incredible story. And you know how there's like Guitar Hero and Rock Hero or whatever it's called, where you have to like play the notes. So that'll be like 2% of it. Maybe the Warped Tour one a little more, because we were playing long sets. But performing is like, I always tell people, is like, being in a band is so tedious and not glamorous at all, because really the part that everybody else sees is the 2% that looks fun playing. And then there's all the other back end stuff, especially with social media now and all your online presence that you have to keep up with. You end up spending as many hours online in front of a computer as a desk job in a cubicle, which sounds depressing, but it's like, and then on top of that, you gotta be a roadie after that. You know, after booking your entire tour, you're going to be a roadie for the next 50% of your tour. And then, 2% of that, you're going to be on stage playing, and, you know, you're going to be trying to sell merch, and you're going to be fixing a tire. Like, you're going to be doing a lot of things you don't like doing. So you better love it, is what I always tell people. Yeah. It's almost like to compare it to like the normal workday life. Like their performing is almost like the beer you have at the end of your long day when you come home from work. But then it's like your workday still isn't even over.
Yeah.
You know, I get to enjoy this for 5 minutes, and then it's like back to work.
The narrative of it being hard work like isn't something that's pushed a lot, especially to kids when they're growing up, because they don't, people don't want you to see behind the curtain. They just want you to see everything that they're sewing. But it's like, dude, when I was in my first band, I was like, music sounds great. Like, when is someone gonna sign us? Mm-hmm. And I want to be signed even, and like just the ignorance behind all of that and the lack of transparency in the industry over time has just like fooled everybody. And that's why people are like, I think you suck, and like they'll move on to the next thing, and they're like, like it doesn't matter.
That reminds me of the ego-crushing night in Muncie, Indiana, where Christian is just standing out there in the cold, packing this trailer, and this girl walks by like, "Hey, are you guys in a band?" And Christian's like, just doesn't want anything to do with it. He's like, "Yes." "Oh, what band? Nobody cares." And she walks away.
She waited until my mouth opened to respond. And goes, nobody cares. And then like I was like, I feel like I blacked out emotionally. I was so fuming. And then like we went back in the club and like had a good time and stuff the rest of the night. But then like 2 hours later or however long later, I'm like, I finally let it go, and I'm like on the dance floor with like Alec and Mitch, and then she just kind of like shuffles by me like, nobody cares. And I was like, God damn it.
It's so mean.
That was like one of the only times I've ever used the C word, and I like meant it. Like I've never experienced anything like that.
Oh yeah, that
wild.
became the inside joke for the rest of that tour. It was just like,
yeah,
oh man, people can be so brutal, and it
that, and then also I see what you're trying to do. I think it's cool. We used to say that all the time. Yeah, man, I totally get it. I see what you're doing. See what you're trying to do.
And that actually people like starting in St. Louis. Yeah. Actually, people is still such a big thing. Like anytime we're playing a festival now, it's like when you get like that security guard who's on his high horse. He's like, actually, you guys got to drive over there. And actually, people are like, that's been an ongoing joke for even the bands I'm playing in now.
Actually, you can't do that because this is why. And I know we didn't tell you that, but actually, sorry. What are you doing now? Did you stop Rosedale? Are you renaming? Are you rebranding? I know you're with that band Mainsail.
Yeah, which they're rebranding too. So I'm down here in Southern California now, between LA and San Diego, but they're like North County, San Diego based, playing bass for them, singing harmonies, and we just finished their new EP. So yeah, that's kind of been like a side project of mine, just because like we had so many similar listeners, I guess, or whatever it's called on Spotify. Or I was like, you know what? If you guys need a bass player and it's gonna help both of our bands to join forces and like play shows together. So I was playing as Rosedale with Mainsail for a couple tours there, even though I had like put Rosedale to rest, put Rosedale hiatus or whatever. So I am like sticking with the Rosedale progression, but I'm changing the name because it's just been such a pain in the ass on like bands in town. That band from Chicago, the Rosedales, still owns that trademark, and I've asked them several times and they're not letting it go. And just a bunch of other like inconvenient reasons. It's not the first thing that you search. It's very unsearch optimizable on Google and such, because there's a Rosedale in every city, and a high school, and a plaza, and a street. So Rosedale band even there's like a bunch of those. So I don't know
Yeah.
what I'm going to call it yet. That's kind of also what this podcast is like figuring out my art, as it's called, and seeing what I'm going to name the next thing, and if it's going to be just me with a video wall behind me, or if it's going to be me and a drummer, or me and back to a 3-piece. I'm not really sure what it's going to look like yet. I'm just like making as many songs as possible, which COVID kind of forced me into that anyway, and Mainsail. Like, we're just back to development just because that's all we can do. Yeah. I'm just like messing around with different sounds and having fun with it. I've been making like more tongue-in-cheek-esque Taylor Swift kind of songs that are more like on my humor side, whether I'm going to use it as my artist thing or more of like, one of them's to promote this podcast. I made like an intro song instead of me just like trying to butcher what this is even about. It's just called Follow and Subscribe. So things like that. I'm just like, I have all the tools to make this stuff, and like, I don't need to be a serious artist. Like, often that can feel fake at times when I'm like, I'm not sad. I'm not, I'm not having girl problems like most songs are about, or whatever. So I'm just gonna write whatever I feel like writing about today, and it's probably going to suck and it's probably going to be cheesy, but sometimes you get a gold gem out of it too, which like it's kind of what I've been into as well. I grew up listening to Blink and Reliant K, and they have some awesome joke songs that like I prefer to listen to if I'm in a good mood, so it's, even though it's kind of monkey business to not write a love song, as a lot of artists still think, some of those songs end up being the most popular thing on especially platforms like TikTok, where it's like, if you want to have any sort of success out the gate as an independent artist, you have to capitalize on such odd platforms now that are very short attention span based, and you can't even make a song over a minute if you want to play in that game. And a lot of bands are getting signed from that platform, which is, it's not surprising, but it's like, whoa, where's my place in that as a songwriter?
Oh my God, I totally feel that. Yeah. I personally don't want anything to do with TikTok, so it's just like, do I have to? Because it's the biggest thing ever right now, and it's like, if you have to, you have to. So I don't know.
I think you have to adapt, and it sucks. Like, I don't like being on social media, but that's where the people are, and that's how people interact, especially now where no one's going to shows. Yeah. It's even more important. So you gotta do it. It's part of that. To me, it falls into that work category. Yeah, which, it can be fun. I'm having fun making songs that will work for the TikTok platform. I'm turning my camera vertical so that I can edit a video for TikTok, and little things like that. I'm like, whoa, this is like a new world that we're in, and I don't have any shows booked for the next year. I'm in a totally different place, but there's no point in complaining about it, is where I'm looking at it from, even though I hate it. But at the same time, there's good parts to everything. I don't even like LA, but my girlfriend moved here, and now I'm up here with her, and I actually kind of like it. So I feel like
cool.
You could get used to anything as long as you have like a positive mindset going into it. And like, even those hard times on Warped Tour, that's kind of where it all began, where it was like, you know what, I lost my band, I'm down to just being myself, let's see what happens. And that's how in 2012 I got on the stage. I finally got a pass to go into Warped Tour, and led me to getting amazing band members like you guys. And you know, as long as you go in with a positive mindset, you'll come out alive at least and successful, which I feel like even just the experiences that we had in the early stages of touring led you guys to so many cool things as well. I'm like sitting back from afar looking in. Brian sent me some of your guys' new band stuff. What's the project called again?
Dead Friends, which also doesn't help with SEO, but there's a rapper, Rich the Kid. He has a song called Dead Friends, so anytime you type in Dead Friends, that comes up first. And then
really?
luckily we have more buzz than this band from Montreal called Dead Friends. So we're like, we're always like second down, so you can find it. But yeah.
It's awesome. And it's funny that even though it sounds nothing like the stuff on TikTok, obviously, that minute and a half song that you guys sent is probably my favorite. And I'm like, damn, it's only a minute and a half. It's so high energy. Like that is social media potential because it's so short. And I mean, that sort of hardcore sound, even though it's a lot more original than just I don't know if you'd even call it hardcore. It's almost got like a bit of that Harvard indie sound to it too, which that's a band that you guys turned me on to. And like a lot of cool progressions that I'm like, I don't even know what that was, but interesting. And it's exciting to listen to.
Nice. Thanks, man. Yeah. This band, it's so weird how it came together. Austin is the lead singer. He writes most of the material. He's from Texas. He actually was in Memphis Mayfire like super early on. Oh, okay. Like right when their first full length came out. And then he quit the band because he didn't like, whatever direction they were going. Had a few other bands, quit music, moved here and kind of wanted to get back into it for fun. You remember Pilot?
Yeah.
Dan, the guitarist from Pilot, is in our band, and Austin and Dan became quick friends, so they joined together. And then Dan recommended Christian to drum on a recording in the studio, and then Christian was like, "Hey, my brother plays bass," and it just kind of like. But it's honestly like my favorite band I've ever been in, which is really fun because I've never been in like a heavy band, so it's cool. Yeah,
we had booked a photo shoot. It was like our first photo shoot as a band. We were just like, we got to get promo pics out there, and Brian shows up to the shoot, and that was like the first time you had ever met Austin.
Yeah,
like
the first time I had seen Dan in like 5 years.
He like walks in the door, and we're already like getting in place in front of this like white background, and Brian's like, "Hey, how are you? Nice to meet you. All right, now let's pose like we've been a band for a while." It was interesting. Yeah.
Well, right on. I was gonna say the drums sound amazing. The tones and the mix.
Oh, thanks.
And the parts, obviously, it's like right up your alley, Christian. So I'm not surprised that like they went straight to you to be the drummer, and well done. And then Brian, did you record bass on it? Mm-hmm. Sweet. Yeah. It and you used that Hoppus?
No.
Oh, really?
Dude, we used So we A-B'd it with Flea's signature bass.
Oh, okay.
And Flea's one, dude, it has this low mid like gurgle to it that is just like fuck, dude. Whenever I use the Hoppus though, I scoop the mids because I think that's how that bass sounds best.
Nice.
For sure.
Yeah.
And Christian, you still rocking that Chicago kit?
Yeah. I love it. I would like to, I don't know. I would like to look at getting a new kit just to try different things. Like the bigger kick drum has been fun, but I don't think I had the, because I came like the generation of drummers who like came up before me, they all wanted their kits to look like Travis Barker's kit, like I'm sure you know. And then like the generation that I was a part of, everybody wanted their drums to look like Aaron Gillespie from Under Oath's drums. So bigger kick drum, 2 floor toms, 1 rack tom, the biggest cymbals you could possibly find. But now I'm just kind of like focused more on like what's practical and what's going to make me a better player. And especially now that like I was going to say like it's kind of like what Brian said, like, yeah, this is the genre that I grew up listening to but never had a chance to play in a band like that. So it's been interesting, like kind of brushing off the cobwebs, because I don't even really listen, like that is not a genre that takes up a significant space of like the pie chart of all the genres I listen to. It's mostly like indie, electronic, like stuff like that. So it's been interesting, like getting back into the like how do you play metal again, and with the drums that come with that, I'm like, oh, it would be cool to try out like an acrylic kit, that like, the clear acrylic kits that, they just sound so attack heavy and like smacky when you hit them, and it would be cool for the sound. But yeah, I love my Chicago drums.
Yeah, I definitely hear the Aaron Gillespie influence and the Under Oath influence in the music as a whole, which, I mean, your Under Oath drum covers are the most underrated and the best I've seen on the internet. Like, I know why you don't have millions of hits, because you don't sit around doing hashtags and stuff all day, like or whatever makes drum covers go viral. But like
it's like the TikTok thing. Like I don't know how to do YouTube. Like I kind of knew how to do YouTube maybe 5 years ago, but they update their algorithm and the way everything is trafficked. And nobody goes around saying like, hey, did you hear they updated the new YouTube algorithm? So it's just like I will work so hard on something and then it will be like 75 views and it's been out for 3 months, and I'm like, okay, you know what, worst case scenario, this is just a portfolio I can send to people, whatever, I have fun making them.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, is at least you have a free place to broadcast your talents, to share to whoever you want to share it to. And I mean, even guys like me, anytime someone tells me to check out this Under Oath drum cover, or if they even say like, I love Aaron Gillespie, I'm like, you got to check out Christian's drum cover. And then like I have a friend, Phil Johnson, who is amazing at Travis Barker-esque drumming, and I'm like, you got to check out Phil Johnson. So there's
the guy? That's the guy who did the drums on the Rosedale, the second full length, right?
That's Brad Fisher. I don't know how much he plays drums anymore, but he is also...
Well, that guy's amazing.
Yeah, he's like, his chops are so good. He taught Phil Johnson a lot of what he knows, and they both grew up playing in one of my favorite bands, Hello Kelly. They've been drum buddies for longer than I've known them, and he's still got a pretty solid YouTube following and channel, and gets called up by a lot of like YouTube musicians to do collabs or come out to the YouTube Awards and play a live set with them. And so like he's gotten a lot of big opportunities from it, and he studies that like algorithm, not as much as he would like to, he admits, but he's still like got his hand pretty deep in it, and like tries to keep up with weekly posts and all that stuff.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's been stretches of time where I was like really considering taking the YouTube thing seriously, because I don't think Dead Friends was involved as it was yet. So I was like, well, I got to do something. I'm gonna try to get it. And then just like realizing as I was going, like the amount of like, just the volume of content you have to produce was just so daunting that I was just like, I don't even know. And then you get it, and then the more you think about that, it's kind of like the people who play video games on YouTube, the gamer YouTube guys that I hear talk about, like, after a while you get so popular, like now, playing video games feels like a job, and they're not really like enjoying the game like they would have if they were just on their couch alone. You know what I mean? So I would have ended up like, am I going to have to do, Bring Me the Horizon releases a new song and I'm not that into it. That's going to be the hot song to cover. And I'm like, I don't know, man,
Yeah, so that's one of the ways that a lot of these guys look at it. Even Phil is looking at what he had some way of finding out what the next number one song was going to be before it became number one. There's some way to find that out, and then he would put some amazing, like, fast, exciting Travis Barker-esque drums on top of it, and then it was ready to go as soon as that song went number one. And that's how he gained a lot of followers. It's crazy, but that's where we're at with technology. It's no longer impressive to create this amazing art piece called an album from start to finish that flows into each other and is well thought out and took years of influences and studying to create, which someone in your demographic or someone who really someone who really appreciates an album like myself will listen to it start to finish and be like, that was an amazing experience. I want to get the hard copy and read through the book as I listen to these lyrics, sort of attachment that a lot of us musicians, especially millennials, grew up in and were influenced by and kind of robbed of our lives to become that. It's no longer impressive to be able to do that, even though it takes so much more thought and creativity than, all right, let's see what the new single is, and then add my skill on top of that, and hopefully it will catch a lot of short attention spans. But it makes sense. It makes sense why that is where we're at too.
Yeah. That's what's so exciting about like waterfalling an album. Like, I'm so excited to do that because I had just heard about it on a podcast. It was like Lauv's project manager was talking about like, oh yeah, we're going to waterfall an album and this is what it means. And I was like, oh my God. Like, yeah, that's the perfect meld of like, hey, I want people to listen to this front to back, and we can't release an album, here it is, and then it, dies after 3 weeks.
Yeah, who knows if somebody made it to track 6, but if you waterfall it and make each, song like it gives it that special attention to where, it's almost like people don't realize like you've kind of now tricked them into hearing the whole album, and even though it's weird to say it that way. But what the attention span thing, it's just the way it is, because it almost feels like everything is like, when that number one song comes out and everybody is looking to, put out use that to put out their content. It's like, everyone's anticipating this massive room full of like, voices, everybody, clamoring for attention, and it's all like a dull roar, but like your friend, whoever can be the first voice to be like, hey, and that'll like catch your ear before all the other voices come in, like then they benefit from the followers and stuff, I guess.
Yeah. It's literally like the parking lot leeches, as we were called on Warped Tour, going around
lizards.
Yeah, going around with headphones, being like, "Hey, here's my story. Here's why you should check out my album. You don't have to buy anything. Here, put them on." And then now you have all the other noises isolated, and that person is listening to high quality headphones of your music. That was such a benefit, and it made bands thousands of dollars who had just a decent home recording album even. Like, so a lot of the ones that were selling like 500 copies a day, I would hear, were nothing exciting, and I'm not even saying that subjectively. I'm saying that like they probably just ended up being like tossed in the trash after a couple days because everyone has to start somewhere. But that was kind of the beginning of it, and I remember going to those DIY meetups at Warped Tour. Before podcasts were this huge thing, where that's where I've also learned a lot of this knowledge of, Waterfall your album. Kevin Lyman was saying that at the DIY meetups. He was saying things like, you want to just give them one song at a time. And all you parking lot leeches, he didn't put it that way, should just put your best song on a CD and sell it for $1. If you need gas money, sell that one song for $1, and you don't, because then they're not going to listen to your worst song. They're going to listen to your best song in that short attention span, because you're talking about short attention spans. And this was like 2010. And then, and now here we are in an all streaming, which was also like, guys like that know this stuff is coming. They've been in the music game for 40, 50 years. But now it's like there's no other way than to waterfall it. And I'm excited to see how that goes for you guys, especially because song to song, the pace and the tones and the style, it gets mixed up so much, which I'm a huge fan of. Everybody, that's one of my downfalls, one of Rosedale's faults in the eyes of a lot of the labels and agents that we were sending my Untitled album and the Again EP to, is pick a genre and stick to it, man. Like, this is an identity crisis. And I was like, thank you. My favorite albums are Identity Crisis. And now with the Waterfall release, it's like you kind of have to be, because everyone's listening to everything. Back to the fact that there's so much music out there and it's so saturated and everyone's grabbing for attention. Now, because of that, the consumer, the listener, is into everything. Like, how many people did we ask, hey, what kind of music are you into? Like, who are you here to see at Warped Tour? When I was walking around selling CDs, 99% of the time, I listen to everything. And that's more true now than ever. And I love that. I think that that's great about the short attention span, is now people are listening to, oldies more than ever, because they're like, hey, if it's a good song, it's a good song. And I saw a funny, the TikTok video of the dude drinking cranberry juice. Like, those songs are going to get popular again because people are just into everything now. So I'm interested to see how your guys' release goes. And I think that especially the hardcore community is going to be stoked on how all over the place it is. Because that's another thing, is metal kids, hardcore kids, they've, as long as they've been into music for long enough, which that sound has matured so much since the Warped Tour days, especially. Yeah. That I feel like a lot of shows, I've been playing hardcore shows. My Europe tour was opening for I Set My Friends on Fire, and I've played metal bars all over Florida and the South, where going in, I was like, oh man, I hope they like my sound. And when I've had bandmates, they've been like, why did you get us on this show? And then 5 minutes into the set, the whole crowd is like, this is badass. Like, as long as they, like, that world, and even a lot of the punk community now, they know if you've been playing your instrument or writing songs for a long time. They know if you put in your 10,000 hours right away. Even the blues cats that we were playing for in like Oklahoma City at the open mic were like, hey, all right, yeah, they play pop, but you know what? They actually are good, except for that one guy at the open mic did not like it. But that's somebody who is not progressed mind, progressed ears to accepting everything. Sorry, you go ahead. No, I digress. That's my point. Everyone's into everything now, and not only musically, everything is progressing to be everyone except everyone, which is amazing. But music, especially in our art, in our world, everything is becoming more acceptable than ever. And I never would have thought 8 years ago releasing a song like my biggest song, Taylor Swift, would have got the attention that it did, with the little effort that I even put into promoting it, just because that's something that people are willing to accept now, because if it's good, it's good, and it's a catchy song, so they like it,
Yeah. I think to add to what you were saying, like they can also, the kids or crowd or whatever at the shows can also tell, like, if you're clearly a copycat who was doing, every opening metal band has like the same sounding metalcore tropes or breakdowns, like rhythm walls, stuff like that. The kids, they know if you're actually putting your craft into songwriting, or if you saw a band and you were like, oh, that's what we have to do, we can do that. And that's huge, like the authenticity will take you like miles. Yeah. Even when you think that they're gonna, like, oh man, they're gonna hate us, but
right. That's maybe a big reason that sometimes I don't know why I like something, but that's maybe a big reason that I was like, hell yeah, this is awesome. It's not like totally ripping off Under Oath by any means. There's a lot of that influence in there, but it's also not doing breakdowns just to do breakdowns, which is to your point. And there's like random tones that don't come in until the last quarter of the song that really tie it all together and make you like. There's times where I've just been listening to the songs Brian sent me as I'm like working, getting prepped for the podcast even, and I'm like, wait a second, I gotta rewind and hear what that even is. Is that a guitar? What is that?
That's amazing. Sick. That's amazing, because that is literally what our singer Austin, like, that's his objective, like that's what we won't even have a name for the song or a name for the part, but he'll be like, okay, but he's like, hopefully in every song we can have either a crazy drum thing or a guitar thing or like something that makes the listener go like, wait, what the fuck? Mm-hmm. Like either rhythmically or tonally or all of it. So like that's the best compliment like you could give us. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's like one of the first things that perked my attention, because like everybody else, I'm distracted doing a million things as I'm listening to music, and sometimes I have to turn the music off because I'm like, I'm getting pulled into the music, and I should just focus on one thing at a time. But your music makes me do that, and a lot of my favorite bands, especially if it's a nostalgic thing, like something where when you're 14, 15, you are 100% into the music you're listening to, and as you age it becomes more of a background thing. But your guys' writing ability and production really has drawn me in to be like, what is this? And bands like Harvard did that. When all the music, and this is another thing I wanted to ask you guys, is what have you guys been listening to lately? Because about 30% of what I listen to has probably been brought to my ears through the Zawackis or someone in Virginia Beach.
That's awesome.
This year, one of my favorite bands is the 1975. But like last year, I listened to Pine Grove more than any band. Have you listened to Pine Grove?
No.
Super. It's almost like folky Americana stuff. Listen to Pine Grove. It's sick.
Cool.
I tend to listen to softer stuff. He Is Legend.
Oh yeah.
That's not soft at all, but I'm super into He Is Legend now.
I've heard very little of He Is Legend, but what I've heard, I remember being like, oh, okay, this is cool.
Check out their newest record, White Bat. So good.
Yeah, that was that's been the benefit of being in a band with Austin, because that that scene of heavy music like is his world. Like I had, like, everybody, for example, always talked about refused The Shape of Punk to Come as just like this iconic heavy record that's timeless, it'll always be remembered. And yeah, I've heard that, but that was like, it wasn't enough for me to like, oh, I should go check that out. Cause like I said, like heavy music just really wasn't my focus, but he played some of it, and sometimes that's what it takes. He would play some stuff in front of me and I'm just like, holy shit. And He Is Legend was one of those, because they've been around forever, and then we were lucky enough to get on a show to open for them.
Oh wow.
And yeah, and I was like, okay, so I should check this band out. And it was like right as they started dropping singles for the record Brian mentioned, and like, yeah, they've been a huge I guess to a degree kind of an influence, I guess, but
I wouldn't say musically. I don't think.
I would say more of an inspiration, because I would say that they are I always tell people, like, seeing He Is Legend live is like they're like rock and roll incarnate. Like, they don't have crazy production or anything, and they don't even play to a click, but they're such a good band that it's totally just like transportive when you're watching them. Their singer is like, he just has that rock star, like, kind of Jack Sparrow thing on stage. Like, oh my gosh, yeah. And their drummer's like an animal. So yeah, like in the heavy music realm, definitely He Is Legend. Also, Every Time I Die, they were another one I really slept on, which is funny because, like, if we're talking about heavy music I listen to, it probably comes down to Every Time I Die, disregarding Under Oath, of course, because that's always been there for me. But Every Time I Die, Turnstile, and He Is Legend, I guess. But Every Time I Die is like is another one that we get compared to a lot, that we like really love. But I think what I like so much about them is how many people that like hear them. Like, we saw them at Warped Tour, I think it was the last year of Warped Tour, and even your girlfriend was like, I don't listen to this type of music, but they were good. They have that accessibility, or I don't know if that's the right word, but
the authenticity. Like, you can feel it when you see them. It's like they mean it.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
It's hard to put into words, but it's just so it just grabs you.
Yeah.
It's so honest. Like, I think that's what it is, honestly. It's the honesty. But yeah, but for me, like, I've been listening to this year, I got into this band called Chase Atlantic, who is just like these three like super young 20-something kids from Australia who make like I don't know what you would call it. It's like electronic, very very hip hop based, like trap beats, and they're singing about like fucking girls and doing drugs and getting money, and I've like never listened to stuff like that, but like it's I don't know, man, it's a vibe. They just grab me.
Interesting.
And then also like Purity Ring, the super 2-piece, super weird synth pop. Yeah, that's my alley though lately.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to check those out.
Yeah.
I gotta send you guys some new Alex Baker that we've been working on.
Oh my gosh, yes, please.
You know how I like take a few months off and then get back into it. So this has been stuff we've been working on since like 2017, but it's finally like on the home stretch, and it's full production now. Like, I played drums on it, and we have like weird instruments filling up the mix. So it's definitely something that I'm stoked to release, and like showcases his songwriting even more, which I'm really stoked about.
Yeah. When he was on your podcast and he said, I'm sorry, my voice is a little hoarse, I was screaming at my brother. Like, completely serious? Oh my god, dude, he's the best.
Yeah, how is he doing? What does Alex Baker's world look like?
It's interesting because he's always on this roller coaster of being in a really good headspace because he was in a band, Coconut Milk, for a while, and they had some success locally. They opened for Jimmy Eat World, and it was like,
whoa,
like they had a lot going for them, but it was like, you know, a lot of the beginning stages of being in a band, internal issues, and so they broke up. And now he's living in a house alone in Cincinnati, and everything's shut down, so he can't even like go out to an open mic anymore, which is kind of another release for him. Even though he claims he hates playing music live, that's kind of his way of like finally being, you know, socially acceptable, which is weird because like we understand him, we know exactly what he's talking about, and we get a kick out of it, but it's like it's so true and honest that it's entertaining. But like in a weird way, he's one of the most down to earth people I know.
He's one of the most real artists I've ever met in my entire life.
Exactly.
People would try to be that character that he is if they could.
For people listening who've seen the Alex Baker episode, this man was in the back of the van. He did a few dates with us. He didn't have a cell phone, and he was following along where we were on a paper map for fun.
He loves maps.
For fun.
Yeah.
Loves maps.
He loves maps.
You don't love maps. Fuck you. He loves maps.
Who loves maps? No one loves maps.
He puts maps up on the wall of his house just to look at, like, oh, there's that. He loves like geography. And another thing, so I drove through Cincinnati to get down here a couple weeks ago, and I stopped at his house and I was like, we should do another podcast. Everyone's loving the podcast you did because of his artistic character. Like, he's a classic.
Yeah.
So we sat down and did another podcast, and for some reason, when that camera's on, I understand when people get camera shy, or, you know, you space out and you forget what you want to talk about when the camera's on you and the lights are on you. But I set it all up in his living room, and for some reason, instead of him getting intimidated, just like the first episode we did, he just got really down about everything and like started pouring out all of his, you know, why he hates life. And when the cameras are off, we're having a good time, we're laughing, he's showing me the things in his house, but once the cameras are on, it gets real, and I kind of become his psychiatrist, which I have no business doing. But so he like poured it all out, why he hates his life, why COVID has messed everything up, what he just wants a companion, all this stuff that he's said before on the first episode. And I find it entertaining. I'm sure people find it entertaining because he's so transparent. And then at the end of it, he was like, you can't use any of that. Like, you can't put it out. I was like, dude, no, like, I need to put it out. Like, this is what's going to draw people to listen to your music, whether they agree with what you think about your psychiatrist or not, or the psychiatrist that you've seen and scared. People need to hear this because, like, there's going to be a lot of people that agree with you, and even if they don't, they're going to be intrigued to check out your music, and that's the only thing you should worry about, because January Blues deserves way more listeners, and I know you
100%.
don't. He doesn't care about that, but his life would be a lot better if he could get just a little more attention. And the reason Coconut Milk started was because a bunch of people in Cincinnati were like, we love what you did on January Blues, Alex, let's start a band. And that got him in a really positive headspace. But his point as well on the podcast was, man, I just wish I could release it. But he's like, the thing about life is he hates the roller coaster. He hates that like everything will get good and he'll be out of the rut that life put him in, and then all those people will go away for whatever reason, whether it's COVID or cancel culture on one of his band members. Like, it's stupid how things happen, but to the point that I had earlier in the podcast is, as long as you go into all those hard times with a positive mindset, you're going to get out just fine. But it's hard for a lot of people to think that way, especially someone who is still into looking at a map as opposed to using a smartphone for anything. Like and part of the reason why he's still so good at writing music, and some of our favorite heroes have kind of lost it, in my opinion, is he never changed to that mindset. He never got sucked in by the culture of distraction, need it now, what social media does, all of the things that that's all the bad things that social media brings people, have never pulled him away from his amazing talent. So that's what I'm always like.
He doesn't need that. He's never needed validation. He's never needed that validation.
Yeah, he doesn't care. He's going to write whatever he's feeling. And if the lyrics don't make sense, they make sense in his head somehow. And the listener grabs that too. Like all of that star power that you wouldn't think that he has comes through in his performance and in his recordings. So it's a shame that he wouldn't let me release that part, because a lot of it was really funny. A lot of it was really sad. Like, it's amazing that even this podcast, we're able to capture that in just a conversation for people to relate to and have feels about. But with Alex Baker, it's one of those things where I was like, I wrote him a novel as to, like, I tried to edit out what he didn't want to be in there, and it wasn't working. So I just emailed him. I was like, maybe I could just try and convince him in a really convincing email as to why this is important to get out there, not only for himself, but for everybody else. And that everything that he's done, as long as he's been okay with me putting it out, because that's really been most of what got him out of the ruts that he's in. Not to pump my own tires, but that's why I wanted to do it. Was I was like, he's so talented, and I know his life is going to get better if he puts these songs out. And so I wrote him a big email, and I compared him to all the greats talk about these issues publicly and how he kind of mocks social media. Kurt Cobain would go on MTV and mock MTV.
Right. Oh my God, yeah.
Billy Corgan, all the people that he looks up to, Tom York, they have that cynicism in looking at the sheep around them and saying, you guys don't understand how poorly you're living with those smartphones, or whatever he's against. But also doesn't want to tell anybody what to do, and he doesn't want anyone telling him what to do. So he just kind of doesn't care. And all of those heroes that he have that in common with him, which is, I'm telling you guys about it because you get it and you see that in him. And it's always funny, like when we were recording January Blues, just hearing some of the conversations we'd have in the other room, I knew you guys were getting a kick out of it sitting in the kitchen because he's just such a character. And he is like those, true artists that, like you said, people wish they could, have that star power, and it's kind of a nostalgic thing that it doesn't really exist anymore.
No,
yeah,
sure.
And I was gonna say, like, and I'm sure you might have already said this in your email to him, but with him talking about the roller coaster that he hates so much, of going up and down and getting to high points and then people going away and stuff, and that creating this despair for him. Mm-hmm. But it's just like, if all of that, if the roller coaster flattened out and all of that went away, and he's in a space where he's not experiencing like this friction in life, then it's just like, what would his creative output look like then? You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of a necessary evil, I think. I was listening to a podcast recently where somebody was talking about the relationship between like happier people, or people who are just like very content in life, they don't really have, you don't see a lot of those like ride or die connections to like their favorite bands, because a lot of people use music to get through the pain, you know what I mean? So it's just like, if you don't have that, then maybe it's not as easy to develop that like connection to a band. I told the singer of Every Time I Die, I was like, your most current album got me through this year, you know, just because like I could hear I related to like a lot of that's a very painful album for him. He was going through a really tough time, and it's just like that was the connecting link. So it's just like I don't even know what I don't even know what Alex Baker would look like if he didn't have all the bullshit in his life that he has to go through, you know?
Yeah, he's honestly like beautiful. Like inside, like who Alex Baker is just like absolutely beautiful, because it's so true, you know?
Yeah.
Bones of a Mexican dog, dude.
Yeah, both. Yeah, and everyone who meets him or hears his music, appreciates that, whether they realize why or not, appreciates that honesty about him. And yeah, I still, see a lot of bright things in his future, even if he doesn't want a lot of things to be released. But my whole goal right now with him is for him to push that personality out to the world, even though he doesn't care to or doesn't want to. And
right.
The first episode, he looked back on it, and I think he regretted a lot of the things he said. But I think most people looked at it like, I can relate to that, or I think that's interesting, or that's cool. Like, he even said that he even admitted that the reason why so many people like that album, January Blues, when they hear it, the few who have heard it, is because he was going through such a depressed state when he wrote it, that it's like he's pouring so much of his heart and soul into those songs and into those takes that, we did it in 11 hours, because he's literally just pouring out the emotion, and, he's got perfect pitch, and it's like, as long as he keeps putting out music, I'm happy, and that's I'm sure most people's approach too. But back to what we were saying is, like, you have to almost do things outside of the music box to get people to finally check out your art. Even if you're a comedian, like, you have to have some sort of outside thing to get people to be like, okay, I'm finally gonna, make the move to support this person, or give them the attention they finally get to listen to their special or listen to their album. So that's another reason why I started this too, is like, I didn't realize this would be a passion of mine, but I really enjoyed when I was touring, and I kind of became a booking agent, which I hated. But what I did like about it was I ended up exposing a lot of my favorite bands. I ended up booking shows in venues that I've always loved to play, and that was more of like a kid growing up wanting to tour and travel and meet new people and play these venues. But it actually became more, I'm stoked that I'm like helping out these bands and meeting other cool musicians, and then they're playing my songs now in my band. Like, whoa, what a reward this has become. And now with, live music being taken away, this is kind of an even better way to expose my fellow artists to the world, is through a podcast that can be shared and live online forever. I have so many good conversations with you guys and other musicians in other venues. We've had so many good conversations with other musicians too. And every time I did, I was like, man, I wish the rest of the world could have heard that conversation. So, we're a little over an hour here now, and I feel like this is a good way to wrap it up. I think that, you guys provided a lot of good insight, and always have. So thank you guys for being on and taking the time, and congrats on the new band and the new album.
Thanks.
When does that album come out, and what's the album called?
It's called Ultrabismal, and there's no set release date for all to be out because we are waterfalling the entire thing. So,
Right.
I don't know when this episode's going to come out, but first single will be out in mid-February, and then we're just going to roll songs out all the way through August.
Cool. And you guys already have social media handles. I'll put all that in there. People can check it out and stay posted on that. Because, I get the odd message, especially on YouTube, comment on YouTube. Hey, I remember you guys from Warped Tour. I remember the bass player with the blue bass or the drummer with the green kit. So people remember you guys even from back in the day and remember us. And it's cool to see that. And I think a lot of people are going to dig this. Yeah. So congrats on all of it.
There was a girl we met in Buffalo on Warped Tour who came to our show in Rochester.
Oh, yeah, we still talk. Like, we still have friends that we talk to from that 2013 Warped Tour.
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
Crazy.
Right on. Well, keep it up, boys. We'll have to do a part 2 for sure. And keep thinking about that video game, because I know you guys are gamers, and I know you have a plethora of tour musician experience that one of these days someone's going to steal the idea, and I hope they do, and create the greatest video game of all time.
Oh man, it's so doable, especially like I'm playing Cyberpunk right now, and your idea immediately made me think of that, because that's like there's a musician element in that game, because long story short, Keanu Reeves is stuck in your head, and he was the lead guitar player of a famous rock band. So you get into some like side quests that deal with the music world and booking a gig and playing a gig. And this band, it like did a cover of our songs, and they're capitalizing off of it. So we're gonna sabotage their tour. And then it goes into like, no, you're just afraid that you're a has-been and like stuff like that. And so when we're telling our tour stories, like Nick having to find his phone and stuff, like it feels like one of the side quests you would have to go off and do in this game, where I always start a side quest in Cyberpunk like this is going to be a small job in and out, and then it's so much deeper. Like, no, Nick didn't just lose his phone, it was stolen. No, like he wasn't just taken, he sold it for an iPod. Now we have to track, like, and it's like, oh my god, that would be the best video game. I can already see it.
Yeah, and the menu is your smartphone, so like you have to respond to fans, you have to book tours, you have to find bands for your tour gig, you have to find local bands, all that stuff from your phone. Sometimes you got to hop on a laptop because you can't do certain things from your phone, and vice versa. Like, just to make it the most realistic, painful game. It takes 8 years to beat.
That's great. I hope you follow through with that, because I know you can, because you programmed your entire light show, and our little brother Danny is in he's making a video game right now. He's his friend comes over every day, and they're going through this like online college of game design, and they're just slowly building worlds in this program called Unity. And I'm a bystander to it all, so I'm just like, holy shit, these dudes are literally learning how to make a video game, and I know you could do it. So I hope you do it.
Damn, I gotta have little Dan the man on here then.
You should.
Well, thank you so much for being on. You guys, your whole freaking family is extremely talented, and it's been awesome over the years. I feel lucky that you guys have been a part of my life, and that you guys are doing it, and we're still friends and able to do podcasts like this. If anything, like, I feel like COVID kind of brought a lot of really important relationships that I kind of take for granted sometimes, because we're just off doing other things kind of closer together. And like I said, we're able to expose it to the world now. So hopefully some people listen in and get some inspiration and check out your new project, Dead Friends.
Yeah.
Mid-February. Follow them on Instagram, all that stuff. I'll put it in the description for everybody as well. And thanks again for doing it.
Yeah, this was fun, man. I'd love to do it again, or if you ever just want to like FaceTime call and catch up, like that's cool too.
For sure.
Yeah, this is cool.
Yeah, I'd love to. Oh, yeah. Friggin' Brian and Christian Zawacki, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me on the podcast. It was really fun to reminisce some old stories and talk about the future. 2021 is here. Should be an interesting one. Thank you guys for checking out the podcast. And if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe, follow if you're listening to this on Spotify or wherever you're listening to this. If you want to leave a review or a comment or a like, that would be much appreciated. Also, a big thank you to Vocalese for protecting all of our voices. I'm going to send you a bottle, Brian and Christian, to protect your guys' throats over this cold East Coast winter you're having. And yeah, that about does it. Thanks again for checking this out, guys, and I'll see you next week for another episode of State of My Art Podcast. Woo!